Project, one of the scariest horror films of all time, or completely overhyped? Spoiler alert, it's completely overhyped. Hey y'all, it's your Twisted Girl Next Door here, and this is my Overhype or Right segment, where I review and dissect popular and cult horror classics to see if the hype surrounding them is justified. Today I am doing the Blair Witch Project that came out in 1999, and it's often credited with making the found footage horror trend kind of hit a catapult, where there were so many movies very similar to it that came out after 1999. And it's also credited with being one of the movies that everyone should see before they die and things of that nature. So it's basically about these friends, these filmmakers, these young people that go into the woods to make a documentary about the so-called legend of the Blair Witch Project. And then these friends disappear, and supposedly this is the footage up until the point that they disappeared. Okay, so I'm just going to put it out there. I think this movie is overhyped for sure. And I'm going to talk about why and dissect why. But my point of reference, because I think you should know, is I had never seen this movie before. So when I say point of reference, I mean, have I seen this movie before? Is this a reviewing? And this, I only saw it one time before in my life, which was just a month ago when myself and a few of my friends did a found footage review of the film, because people were telling me I should watch it. So, you know, if you want to check out my found footage review, which was like a real-time kind of reaction to the Blair Witch Project, I'll put the link in the description box so you can check that out. But I wanted to really dissect it, to really get into why this movie is not as groundbreaking as the hype around it has given it to. So, yeah. Let's get into the guts of the Blair Witch Project. Okay, so the first point. Was the plot innovative and or groundbreaking? No. No, this plot wasn't innovative and or groundbreaking. Like, no, it actually wasn't. You know, when I was first recommended to watch the Blair Witch Project, I was told, oh, there's been only like one other found footage film ever before this one, like some obscure film back in the 1970s or something. Actually, that's not true. Right before 1999, there were like almost 10 found footage films, and some of them were actually popular. So, you know, the fact that this movie, you know, up till me like doing some research to find that out, I had thought this movie was supposedly one of the big factors of being iconic because it was one of the first found footage that made people think that it was real. And actually, that's not true either. There were other found footage films before this, like back in the 1970s, 1980s, and one like 2 years before this one came out, that were very much playing on that trope. Very much playing on that, is this real? Kind of a thing. So, in that sense, you know, I think one of the things of seeing if something is a horror classic is to see if the plot is groundbreaking, if it's something that just hasn't been tackled before. And yeah, no. Blair Witch Project was not necessarily an original when it came to a found footage horror film. Second point, were any of the characters in the film iconic and or memorable? That's a no. That is a no. I think I'm going to give it a little bit more of a leeway, though, because in found footage, it's not necessarily that a character needs to be iconic, because technically in found footage, my thought process is that these people are supposed to seem like everyday people that could be doing something regular and then crazy stuff happens. So they're not necessarily going to have the best lines and be totally like cool completely, because this is supposed to be raw, you know, footage and whatnot. But even with that said, none of these characters, I mean, I would argue I was actually annoyed by a good amount of these characters in the film, just with some of the bad decisions they made that just seemed a little contrived. And yeah, there was no iconic characters in this movie, in my opinion. I mean, it was a small plot, it was a small, you know, cast, but even then, no. Third point, the dialogue / script. Was it innovative? Were there some great monologues and one-liners and whatnot that will stay in popular culture being quoted forever? No. I don't think there were. I mean, I guess you could argue that ending scene where she's, spoiler alert if you haven't seen this movie, where she's like crying to the camera. Even if you haven't seen that movie, even though I had never watched this movie, I knew that scene. So honestly, unless you've been living under a rock, you probably have seen this scene either, parodied or something, where she's basically crying into the camera and she's like, the snot's coming out of her nose and she's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That was my acting, guys. I was a theater major. I know I say that a lot, but I was. So she's, doing that. And even that, I mean, that's all you got, right? And I thought, maybe that was the ending scene. Maybe there were other moments throughout, and there weren't. That was probably the most iconic scene. And probably just because of how ridiculous it was, looking at it in retrospect. Yeah. So I'm going to say no. No, I don't think this script was all that great. I don't even care if that was found footage and it's supposed to be natural. I think people naturally can talk cool, and not cool, but like in ways that's memorable. And I don't think anyone did that in this film. Fourth, and this is the most important, I think, when thinking of a horror classic, was it scary? No. No. I don't think it was. I think there were moments where maybe I was anticipating something to happen, and in that sense, the tension, was something, or maybe times when I couldn't really see what was going on because a lot of it was filmed during the nighttime and it had really crappy equipment, even for the 90s, in my opinion. No, there weren't a lot of scares. Now, I will put this in context coming up next, when it comes to the scares as well. So I'm guessing because they were marketing this as perhaps it was something that really happened, I could see why people who thought that was the case could be creeped out by it. If in their first viewing, they were watching something thinking this stuff actually was happening to someone. I think in that sense, you could be kind of scared. But even then, not a lot happens. Not even a lot of scary moments to the people. One of the other things I like to do when it comes to dissecting a film is looking at the context in which the film was made. What year it came out, what was going on in the world when this movie came out. And so it was like 1999. Like I said, the marketing around this film, I think, is a big factor of this. Also 1999 was when a lot of people thought Y2K was going to happen, that the end days were going. Y2K did not happen. Fun fact, in case you didn't notice. So that might have been, just this whole thing of the unknown, the Mayan calendar, blah, blah, blah. And also the fact that the marketing with this was the idea that this was a real movie and that something had actually really occurred to these people and that they were disappeared. In that context, once again, like I said, when it comes to the scare factor, I could see why this movie might have creeped someone out had they watched it and thought, this is real. That's the only thing I can give it. Because other than that, yeah. So getting into the major pros and cons of this film, because no movie, horror classic or not, is perfect. And this definitely is not a perfect film. Let's get into the pros and the cons. One pro that I really enjoyed was the witch lore. I thought that was actually very cool. Like, some of the coolest moments of this film is the beginning. When they're talking to like the townspeople and stuff, and when they're trying to get into who the Blair Witch is and what's the mystery behind that. I just think stuff like that is cool, and I think that helped in building the world around them. And I think that was definitely a pro to this film and creating an atmosphere. The second pro was the acting. I think the acting in this film, once again, helped play into the idea that these were real people, really obnoxious people, but that they were real, right? Because, I mean, usually if they weren't real, there would be that one person that maybe was likable and relatable. And the way they were playing the fear when they were in the woods and things of that nature, it resonated. I believed them. I didn't think anyone was like, man, this is just bad acting. I believed them. I thought it worked. And I think when you have a found footage thing, you do need actors who are very natural and that they don't seem like they're putting on a show because the camera's there. At least back in the day. I think now you can do a found footage, or would it be vlog footage film where the camera's there and people are hamming it up. But then stuff gets real and then maybe they don't. But in this sense, the acting was solid. And since I named a lot of drawbacks from the film within the points I, dissected, I'm just going to go with one major con of the film in this particular segment, which is nothing happened. Like, I'm serious, nothing happened. Like, there were some moments where something was dark and something was like, what's that shadow? But it was a lot of nothing actually occurring. Like, I feel like it was one of those things where you would get scared because you were anticipating getting scared, or you would get scared because your imagination was going over what could possibly be going on in the dark because you can't see it with the camera. And sometimes that works because less is more. I am one of those people that believe that in horror films, that less is more. But I think in this case, no. I don't think less was more. I think they needed to give me something more to believe that this was worthy of being an evergreen kind of horror film. Because that's the thing about a horror classic, right? It has to be evergreen. I don't care if the CGI or the effects and everything like that looks dated. It has to be something about this film that you can watch it 20 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years from the time it came out. And even if you hadn't seen it before, still be like, wow, this movie had merit. It doesn't have to be your favorite, but for it to be a horror classic, I think it has to have some merit in terms of, the epicness of it, which I don't think this had. Nothing happened, y'all. Nothing happened. She cried in the camera. That happened. That's probably why that's the most scene that's parodied, because what else could you parody in this film? What else could you parody? You didn't see anything. So, with all of that said, is the Blair Witch Project overhyped, or are the people who love it right? This movie is completely overhyped. You don't need to put this on your bucket list, okay? If people have been telling you to watch this film, no, you don't have to. I did it for you. You don't need to watch this. It is not a movie that everyone and their mother should see before they die or something. No, it's not. It's overhyped. It's an overhyped film. And I'm pretty sure there's better, found footage films out there. And I'm going to find them. So, did you watch the Blair Witch Project? Do you think I'm completely wrong in my assessment? Or maybe you completely agree? Let me know. Comment down below and let me know your thoughts. And also, be sure to subscribe so that you are the first to know when I post my videos of all things horror. Thanks for watching. Let's get creepy together.